The letter from the immigration office arrived on a Tuesday in September. I know it was a Tuesday because the post in our area of Chiang Rai comes on Tuesdays and Fridays, which I know because Juanita has told me this approximately 40 times across 4 years, and I have noted it and forgotten it, and noted it again with the specific rhythm of a man who does not receive much post and who therefore does not retain post-day information as operational knowledge. The letter was addressed to my wife because the letter was from the immigration office, because my retirement extension visa is renewed annually, and the renewal requires a letter of sponsorship from my Thai spouse, and in our arrangement, Juanita handles the Thai language correspondence because she can read it and I cannot. And this is not an unusual arrangement, and it is also, as it turned out, the arrangement that produced a situation I want to describe carefully and without excessive drama, because the drama of it is entirely in the understanding and not in anything that actually happened. The letter sat in a drawer in the kitchen for approximately 6 weeks. I need to give you Juanita before I give you the drawer, because the drawer only makes sense in the context of the woman who put the letter in it. Juanita is 46, from Lamphun originally, and she has been in Chiang Rai for 18 years. She came at 28 to manage a property her family owned, and she stayed because Chiang Rai suited her in the ways that cities suit the people they were built for, which is that the scale and the pace matched what she needed, and she has built her life here with a thoroughness and a patience that I recognized when I met her, and that I have continued to recognize across 4 years of marriage. She has 2 rental units that she manages herself. She handles the maintenance coordination, the tenant relationships, the accounting, and the occasional renovation. And she manages the household. And she manages her mother's needs in Lamphun. And she manages me, which is a category she has not described to me in those terms, but which I have come to understand is real, and which she does with a combination of patience and specificity. That is, in my honest assessment, the most skilled management I have encountered in 69 years of being managed, including 36 years of being managed by project clients. She is very capable, and she does not require praise to remain capable, and she does not consult me on most decisions because most decisions in our household are her decisions to make, and I have found this arrangement, across 4 years of living inside it, both comfortable and occasionally clarifying, and the October letter was a clarification. The letter sat in a drawer in the kitchen for approximately 6 weeks. I want to be accurate about this. It was not hidden. It was in the drawer where Juanita keeps correspondence that she has not yet dealt with, which is the second drawer from the top on the left side of the kitchen counter, and which I have opened perhaps 100 times across 4 years for the purpose of finding a pen or a rubber band or one of the instruction manuals for the kitchen appliances that I have never read and that she has also never read, and that are in the drawer, in the way that instruction manuals are in drawers, which is permanently and without purpose. I opened that drawer in late October, and the letter was there. I asked Juanita what it was. She said it was from the immigration office. I asked what it said. She said she hadn't got around to it. I held the letter, and I looked at the date on it, and I looked at the calendar, and I did the arithmetic in the way that engineers do arithmetic, which is quickly and without drama, and the arithmetic produced 48 days remaining. Letter arrived 45 days ago. Window remaining 3 weeks. I set the letter on the counter. I did not say anything further at that point, because there is a specific art to the domestic not saying anything further that I have acquired across 4 years of this marriage, which is that some things said immediately are said poorly, and some things said later are said well, and this was a thing to say later. I made tea. We had the evening. I asked Juanita what it was. She said it was from the immigration office. I asked what it said. She said she hadn't got around to it. I said, when does my visa expire? She looked at the calendar on her phone and said the 15th of November. I looked at the letter more carefully. The letter was dated the 2nd of September. I looked at the calendar. It was the 23rd of October. My name is Declan. I am 69 years old. I am from Cork, and I have lived in Chiang Rai with Juanita for 4 years. And I want to tell you something about what an engineer brings to this kind of situation, and what it turns out he does not bring. because the combination is instructive. An engineer brings precision about facts, comfort with specifications, a willingness to sit with problems that have not yet resolved themselves, and the understanding that a structure that was designed for one set of conditions may need to be redesigned when the conditions change. These are useful attributes in a marriage that requires explicit negotiation, and I have applied them with moderate success. A project that goes off-plan is not a failed project. It is a project that requires reassessment of the specifications. The drawer was off-plan. I reassessed. I have new specifications. I am monitoring against them. What an engineer does not bring: facility with the implicit, patience with the unstated, comfort with things being understood without being said. These are the attributes of the Chiang Rai arrangement that I have had to develop in retirement, and I have developed them imperfectly and with effort, and the imperfection produces, occasionally, a situation in which something is happening that I have not recognized because it is happening in a register I am not trained to read. The drawer was, possibly, one of those situations. Liam may be right. Juanita may have sat with the letter for 6 weeks for reasons that were not primarily about the bathroom, and the bathroom was a coincidence or a convergence, and the resolution was good regardless, and I am not going to pull the thread further than I have pulled it. The engineering approach says, the output was satisfactory. The structure has been adjusted. Monitor and report. My name is Declan. I am 69 years old. I am from Cork, and I have lived in Chiang Rai with Juanita for 4 years, and I want to tell you what happened across the following 3 weeks, which was not a catastrophe, and was not a confrontation, and was not the beginning of a divorce, and which produced in me an understanding of my own domestic situation that I had not had before, and that I should have had much earlier, and that cost me approximately nothing to acquire, and would have cost a great deal more if I had acquired it differently. Let me explain the visa structure first, because the visa structure is the story, and the story requires the structure. I should give you some background before the visa structure, because the background tells you what kind of man arrived in Chiang Rai in 2020, and why the letter in the drawer was a particular kind of surprise for him. I spent 36 years as a civil engineer in Cork. Roads, drainage, industrial estates, the kind of infrastructure work that is unremarkable to the people who use it, and that the people who build it find genuinely satisfying in a way that is difficult to explain. Civil engineering is a field that attracts men who like the concrete result, who find it rewarding to stand at the end of a project and say, that road was not there, and now it is, and I made decisions that made it so. I am one of those men. I retired at 64, sold the house in Cork after my wife Eileen died in 2018, and spent 2 years in a state of productive restlessness, visiting my daughter Sierra in London, my son Fergal in Dublin, doing some consultancy work on an industrial access road in Limerick that I could have done in my sleep, before deciding that the restlessness was not going to resolve itself in Ireland, and that I should take myself somewhere I had no particular history, and find out what I was for in the absence of the engineering. A friend from an engineering conference had been talking about Chiang Rai since 2015. I came for a month in 2020. I stayed because of Juanita and because of the mountains, in roughly that order. Let me explain the visa structure first, because the visa structure is the story, and the story requires the structure. I am in Thailand on a retirement extension visa, which is renewed annually, and which requires, as a condition, that I meet the financial requirements, either a monthly income above a certain threshold or a deposit in a Thai bank account, and that I have a Thai address of record. The Thai address of record is Juanita's house, which is registered in Juanita's name, because I cannot own the land it sits on, and because I have not chosen to pursue a long-term lease arrangement for reasons that seemed sensible 4 years ago, and that I have since come to think about differently. The marriage, in the context of the visa, adds a layer of paperwork. A married foreigner can use the marriage extension rather than the retirement extension, which has somewhat different requirements, and ours is structured as a marriage extension because the immigration officer who processed my first renewal in Chiang Rai in 2021 recommended it as more straightforward for our situation. The marriage extension requires documentation of the marriage, documentation of the Thai spouse's financial status, and a letter of sponsorship from the Thai spouse confirming that she supports the extension of her foreign husband's stay in Thailand. The letter of sponsorship is not complicated. It is a standard form available from the immigration office. It requires Juanita's signature. It is what was in the drawer for 6 weeks. I want to describe the quality of those 3 weeks between the 23rd of October and the 15th of November with precision. But first, I want to give you what 4 years of this marriage has looked like in general, because a single month is not a fair representation of an arrangement. Juanita and I have, in my honest assessment, a good marriage. It is not a marriage in the model of the marriage I had with Eileen, which was a marriage of 31 years between two people who had grown up in the same country and who shared the assumptions that a common cultural formation produces, and which had a warmth and a familiarity that I do not expect to reproduce. What it is, a marriage between two people who have chosen each other at a time of life when choices are made with more precision and less romanticism, and who have built, across 4 years, a household that works and a companionship that is genuine and a mutual accommodation that is more explicit than the accommodation I had with Eileen, but not less real for being explicit. We discussed things that I had not previously discussed with a wife. Who manages which aspect of the household budget? What happens when my pension and her rental income are allocated? Which decisions are joint and which are individual? These discussions are sometimes uncomfortable, because I was not raised in a tradition of explicit household negotiation, and neither was she. But we were raised in different implicit traditions, and the explicit negotiation is preferable to 2 sets of conflicting implicit assumptions, which is what you get if you don't negotiate. And I know this because the early months of the marriage involved exactly that. The drawer, in its way, was a continuation of the explicit negotiation by other means, and the outcome of the drawer was the bathroom, and a calendar reminder, and a clearer understanding of the visa structure, and the bathroom is excellent. I want to give you the bathroom, because the bathroom is the ending the story earned, and it deserves to be seen. Juanita called the contractor on the Monday morning after the Sunday conversation. The contractor came on Tuesday and assessed what was involved. The job was quoted at 62,000 baht, and that is what it cost, with a precision that I found satisfying in the way that civil engineers find accurate estimates satisfying. The work took 11 days. The tile Juanita chose is a pale green that is the color of the hills in the early morning when the mist is still on them, which I did not notice this specific association until I used the bathroom for the first time after the renovation and saw the color in context and mentioned it to Juanita, and she looked at me for a moment and said she had chosen it because she liked it and not because of the hills, but that was an interesting observation. I said I was glad she liked it. She said it was an excellent bathroom. I said it was. We left it there. The bathroom is on the left as you go down the corridor from the kitchen, and I use it every morning at about 6:30, and every morning it is the color of the hills in the early morning. And every morning I think about the letter and the drawer, and the Sunday conversation, and the 62,000 baht, and the calendar reminder that will fire in September. And I think, this is what understanding costs, when the understanding is acquired correctly, which is early enough to be useful, and from a conversation, rather than from a crisis. I paid 62,000 baht for the understanding. I have seen men pay considerably more for considerably less. The bathroom is excellent. The hills are what they are. The letter for next November's renewal is in Juanita's calendar. These are the things that are true, and they are sufficient. I want to describe the quality of those 3 weeks between the 23rd of October and the 15th of November, with precision, because the precision is where the actual education is. The first week, I asked Juanita to sign the letter. She said she would get to it. This is a sentence I have heard across 4 years in several contexts, and it is a sentence that has a genuine range of meaning. It can mean, she will do the thing within a day or two. It can mean the thing will happen but not promptly. And it can mean, she has not decided whether she wants to do the thing and is managing the uncertainty by neither doing it nor saying she won't. I have learned across 4 years of being married to a Thai woman who is considerably more careful about commitments than I am, to distinguish between those three meanings, and in late October I was not certain which one I was hearing. I asked again on Thursday. She said soon. I noted the shortening of the response, and I did not press. Because pressing in this marriage is a technique with a specific efficacy curve. It works immediately in the case of things Juanita had simply deferred, and it does not work at all in the case of things she has not decided about, and it was not yet clear to me which category the letter was in. The second week, I had a conversation with an Irish friend in Chiang Rai, who is also married to a Thai woman, and who has been here 9 years, and who I want to call Liam, because his actual name is not far from Liam, and because he would recognize himself from the description. Liam has been married to his wife for 7 years, and has been through the visa renewal process more times than I have, and with, on at least 2 occasions, complications I do not need to describe here. I told Liam about the drawer situation. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You understand what's happening, don't you?" I said I thought she had just forgotten about it for a while and hadn't got around to it. He said, "That might be true," he said, "or she's noticed that the signature gives her something, and she's thinking about whether to use it." I said, "Use what?" He said, "Leverage." I said, "Leverage for what?" He said, "I don't know, but what's she been asking you about lately?" And I thought about what Juanita had been raising in the preceding weeks, which was a trip to her mother's in Lamphun that she had been asking about for months, and a bathroom renovation she wanted to commission, and a conversation about whether we would visit my daughter in Cork at Christmas that we had not resolved. Liam said, "Pick one." I said, "The bathroom." He said, "Probably." I sat with that for a day. I want to be very precise about this, because the precision is where the story differs from the one that is easy to tell. Liam's interpretation might be wrong. I want to say that clearly. Juanita might genuinely have set the letter aside and not thought about it. And the timing of the October ask, when I happened to open the drawer, might have coincided with a period when she had other things on her mind, and the letter was simply not at the top of the list. She runs the household. She manages the property in Chiang Rai that she owns and rents out. She maintains the relationship with her mother in Lamphun. She is 46 years old with a full life that does not revolve around my immigration paperwork, and a Thai language letter from an immigration office that her husband would eventually ask about is, in her operational priorities, a legitimate item to defer. That is one interpretation, and it is honest. The other interpretation, Liam's, is also honest. A Thai woman who has lived with a foreign husband for 4 years, and who is managing a marriage that has its tensions and its requests, and its unresolved questions, has understood, perhaps explicitly, perhaps as habit, that her husband's right to remain in Thailand requires her annual cooperation, and the cooperation is something she can choose to offer promptly, or to offer slowly, and the slowness can be its own form of communication. Both of these interpretations are available. I cannot resolve which one is accurate, and I have decided that the resolution is not as important as the understanding, which is, I had not previously understood that my right to stay here requires her annual cooperation, and now I do. The third week, I sat down with Juanita on a Sunday morning, and I said, "I need the letter signed by the 15th. I want to give you that Sunday morning more fully, because it was not a confrontation, and it was not a crisis, and it was also not quite an ordinary domestic conversation, and the specific quality of it is the thing I want to preserve." We were at the kitchen table with tea. The letter was in the drawer. I had left it there rather than putting it on the table, which is a decision I made because presenting her with the letter would have had a different character from asking her about it, and the different character would have changed the conversation. I asked when she thought she might get to it. She said she knew it needed to be done. I said I knew she knew, and I asked whether there was something about the timing or the process that I could help with. This is engineer speak for, is there an obstacle I can remove? And the honest translation is also, I am aware you may not be deferring this entirely without reason, and I am asking you to tell me if there is a reason. She looked at me for a moment. She said, I want to do the bathroom. I said I knew. She said, I've been waiting for you to agree to the bathroom. I said I hadn't realized the bathroom and the letter were connected. She said she wasn't sure they were, specifically, but they were both things that needed doing, and she had been thinking about the bathroom for 2 years, and she had asked about it several times, and she had stopped asking because it didn't seem like I was going to agree, and she had not been thinking about the letter and the bathroom as connected things, but she was also not going to say they were completely unconnected. I said I thought we should do the bathroom. She said, You've been thinking about this. I said, Yes. She said, And what changed your mind? The rest of that exchange I have already told you. What I want to add is that this conversation, across about 20 minutes, was the most honest and specific conversation Juanita and I have had about how our household works, and it was produced by a letter sitting in a drawer, and I am going to be grateful for the drawer. The third week, I sat down with Juanita on a Sunday morning, and I said, I need the letter signed by the 15th. She said she knew. I asked about the bathroom. I said, I want to talk about the bathroom. She looked at me. I said, I think we should do the bathroom. She said, You've been thinking about this. I said, Yes. She said, And what changed your mind? I said it was a good idea, and we'd had the money in the account, and I hadn't had a good reason not to do it. She said, It's 62,000 baht. I said, I know. She picked up the letter. She signed it. She put it on the table in front of me. She said, I'll call the contractor tomorrow. I said, Thank you. She said, For the letter or the bathroom? I said, Both. She laughed, which is a laugh I have heard across 4 years, and that means she finds me specifically amusing rather than generally amusing. And the distinction matters to me, and I notice it every time. I should tell you what I learned, because the learning is the reason I am telling the story, and the story is more interesting than the summary, but the summary is what men need. Let me add something about the state of my knowledge before the drawer, because the before matters for the after. I had known, in the abstract, that my visa required annual renewal. I had known that it required the marriage documentation and the financial documentation. I had not, before October 2023, fully understood that it required Juanita's active cooperation in the form of a signed letter, and that this letter was not a formality she was obligated to produce, but an act of sponsorship that she was free to produce or not produce, and that the being free to not produce it was a legal reality of my domestic situation that I had absorbed without examining. This is the specific quality of the understanding I am describing. Not that I was ignorant of the visa structure entirely, but that I had absorbed the parts of the structure that required my own action without absorbing the part that required hers, because the part that required hers was handled by her, and things that are handled by someone else are things you tend not to think about until they stop being handled. She had handled the letter promptly the previous 3 renewals. There was no reason to believe she would not handle it this time, and there was also no reason why she would be required to. Both of those things were true, and I had only thought about the first one. I should tell you what I learned, because the learning is the reason I am telling the story. I had understood it as my visa, administered with the help of Juanita's signature, and this is a misunderstanding that is available to any foreign man in Thailand who treats the immigration paperwork as his administrative burden rather than as a shared household arrangement. The marriage extension is jointly held in a way that the retirement extension is not, because the retirement extension depends on my income and my bank account and my address, things that are technically mine, while the marriage extension depends on the marriage, and the marriage is not mine, and the letter of sponsorship that the marriage extension requires is Juanita's to give or to withhold, and I had not thought about the withholding. I should also tell you what I have done differently since November, because the learning should produce a change, and the change should be visible. I want to be more specific about the 3 conversations, because each of them had a specific outcome, and the outcomes together constitute the practical education. The first conversation, the timeline conversation, was simple and worked. I asked Juanita whether she could put a reminder in her calendar 6 weeks before the November renewal deadline, and she did, and the reminder is there, and the letter for the next renewal is, as far as I know, something she will produce when the reminder fires, which will be in mid-September, which will give 6 weeks of buffer. The conversation required about 4 minutes and had the character of a household logistics discussion, which is what it was, and the outcome was concrete. The second conversation, the retirement extension alternative, was more complicated and is not yet resolved. I had the conversation with the immigration lawyer in Chiang Rai, which cost me 800 baht for 30 minutes and produced the information that my income exceeds the retirement extension threshold and that I could switch at the next renewal. I have not yet had the conversation with Juanita about the switch, because the switch is a decision that changes the nature of my dependence on her cooperation, and I want to be honest with myself about why I am considering it before I present it to her. Am I considering it because it is administratively simpler? Yes. Am I also considering it because it removes the annual point at which her cooperation is formally required? Also yes. And whether that second consideration is prudent self-protection or a statement about how much I trust her is a question I have been sitting with, and I have not resolved it, and I am going to continue not resolving it until I understand it better. Because making a visa decision to communicate a message about trust is a different kind of decision from making it for administrative reasons, and the two motivations require two different conversations, and I am only ready for one of them. The third conversation was the bathroom, and the bathroom is finished and excellent. I should also tell you what I have done differently since November, because the learning should produce a change, and the change should be visible. I have had, since November 2023, 3 conversations with Juanita about the visa that I had not had before. I asked her to put the sponsorship letter in her calendar 6 weeks before the renewal date, which she did, and which means I will not be finding it in the drawer on the 23rd of October again. The second was about the alternative. I had a conversation with an immigration lawyer in Chiang Rai who told me that if I met the income threshold for a retirement extension, I could switch to that structure at the next renewal, which would remove the sponsorship requirement. I met the threshold. I have not switched, because switching requires a conversation with Juanita that I have deferred, because the switching would be understood by her, correctly, as a decision to not require her cooperation for my continued stay, and I need to think about what message that sends before I send it. The third conversation was about the bathroom, which was completed in February, and which is excellent. I want to tell you what the learning produced, because the recording should be useful to the man who is currently inside the situation I have described, or who will be. The most important thing I now understand about the marriage extension visa is this. It is a jointly held structure. The retirement extension depends on my income, my bank account, and my address, things that are technically mine alone. The marriage extension depends on the marriage, which is not mine alone, and the letter of sponsorship that the extension requires is Juanita's to produce or to withhold, and the withholding is a legal possibility and not a theoretical one. I had not thought about this before October 2023. I am telling you because you should think about it before your October. Specifically, does your wife know the timeline of your visa renewal? Does she know that her signature is required and when? Is there a calendar reminder? Is the conversation about the sponsorship letter a routine household conversation, or a surprise that arrives 6 weeks before a deadline? The conversation should be routine. It costs 4 minutes to make it routine. The alternative costs more than 4 minutes, and the cost depends on what your wife decides to do with the awareness that her signature is required, which is an awareness she has whether or not you have the conversation, and which it is better for you both to have made explicit. The second thing, if you meet the income threshold for a retirement extension, find out what switching would involve. You may not want to switch. There are reasons to prefer the marriage extension and reasons to prefer the retirement extension, and the right structure depends on your situation. But you should know the alternative exists. I paid 800 baht for 30 minutes of an immigration lawyer's time to get this information. It is the cheapest due diligence available. I want to say one more thing about the visa structure, specifically for the men who are earlier in their Thailand arrangements than I am, and who have not yet encountered the equivalent of the drawer. If you are in Thailand on a marriage extension visa and your wife is your Thai sponsor, your continued right to stay passes through her cooperation. This is not a secret. It is the structure of the visa, but it is the kind of thing that men absorb in the abstract and do not think about concretely until they need to. The concrete version is, she signs a letter once a year. The letter is a form. The form is available at the immigration office. If she signs it promptly, you renew smoothly. If she doesn't, you have a conversation about why not, and the conversation is easier to have before November 15th than it is on November 14th. Make the sponsorship letter a household calendar item. Tell her you've put it in both your calendars. If she asks why, you can say, because I want to make sure I give you enough notice. This framing is honest and it shifts the conversation from being about her obligation to being about your organization, which is the framing that is more comfortable for everyone and that also happens to be the framing that produces the same outcome, which is the letter being signed on time. The outcome is what matters. The framing that produces it is the tool. The question of whether to switch to a retirement extension is one only you can answer, and I cannot tell you what to do because I haven't decided what to do. What I can tell you is that the decision is available, and finding out that it is available cost 800 baht, and that the decision's existence is worth knowing regardless of whether you exercise it. I am going to end with Liam, because Liam is the most useful person in this story, and he deserves his ending. Let me give you the Chiang Rai life first, because the recording has spent most of its time on 6 weeks and a drawer, and I want to give you the 4 years. Chiang Rai is a small city in the northern hills, considerably quieter than Chiang Mai, with the mountains that are always in the background of the photographs, and that are also always in the background of the actual days, which is a thing I was not prepared for when I arrived. Mountains as ambient presence, as the specific quality of light in the late afternoon when they catch it and hold it, as the explanation for the air temperature in the evenings being 5 degrees lower than the daytime air, and the evenings therefore being excellent. The city is manageable. A Farang of my age and temperament can learn to navigate it without becoming expert in it, and the navigation is sufficient. I have the morning market on Saturdays, which I attend without Juanita, because her Saturday mornings are for administration, and the Saturday market is where I have become, over 4 years, a recognizable face at 3 or 4 stalls. And the recognizability is the form of belonging available to a foreigner in a provincial Thai market. I have a coffee place near the old clock tower where I read on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I have Liam, who I have a beer with on Friday evenings at a place near his house, and Liam is the person I talk to when I need to talk to someone who understands what I am describing, which is not a demand I place on Juanita, because Juanita is not required to understand what it is to be a foreigner in her country. She is in her country. The requirement runs the other way. I want to give you one more thing about the Chiang Rai expat community, because the community is relevant to why the drawer situation was processed the way it was. Liam is the oldest of my regular Chiang Rai contacts, in both senses. He has been here the longest, and he is the oldest person I drink with on Fridays. The others are younger. A Belgian man of 55, who has been here 4 years, and who is still in the phase of finding everything remarkable, which I understand, because I was in that phase, and which I try to remember with patience when he tells me things I know. A retired New Zealand teacher called Ian, who has been here 3 years, and who has a very different domestic arrangement from mine, which is that he and his Thai partner are not married, and do not intend to be, which is a valid arrangement, and which does not come with a letter to be signed. I have not told any of them about the drawer, because the drawer is not a story I want circulating, and because it is a story that requires more context than a Friday evening provides, and because I am telling it here, which is the appropriate venue. Liam knows because Liam is the person I go to with things I am still working out, and he has the specific patience of a man who has worked a lot of things out himself, and who does not find other people's working out tedious. I am going to end with Liam, because Liam is the most useful person in this story, and he deserves his ending. I told him in March about the bathroom, and the signed letter, and the new calendar arrangement, and I told him about the 3 conversations, and I told him about the immigration lawyer and the retirement extension alternative, and the conversation with myself that I had not yet completed. He sat with this for a moment. I told him in March about the bathroom and the signed letter and the new calendar arrangement. He said, "So you sorted it?" I said I had. He said, "And the leverage?" I said I was not certain there had been leverage, specifically, but I was now aware that the leverage was available. He said, "That's the same thing." I said, "I'm not sure it is." He said, "In 4 more years you will be." I said I would report back. He laughed. I bought the drinks. The drinks are usually on me, which is a different and considerably cheaper arrangement than the one I want to tell you about, and which I have come to see as a reasonable contribution to a 9-year friendship with a man whose sight knowledge saves me from making the kind of expensive mistakes that I have watched other men make and that I have thus far avoided, the drawer notwithstanding. The drawer was not an expensive mistake. The drawer cost 62,000 baht, and an honest conversation, and I got the bathroom, and I got the understanding, and the understanding is worth more than the bathroom, though the bathroom is excellent, but which I have come to accept as the price of friendship with a man who has been right about Thailand for 9 years, and who, to his credit, has never once told me he told me so. I will report back in 4 years, as I said I would. I expect him to be right. I am starting to think that this may be the most reliable prediction available to me, which is a specific and useful form of knowledge in a country where I do not have 36 years of local context, and I value Liam for it, the way I would value a colleague who has been on a project for 9 years and whose sight knowledge you cannot replicate and must therefore rely on. He is the sight knowledge. I am the new engineer. The project is going well enough. In 4 more years I may be able to return the favor, which would be the most productive use of local knowledge I can imagine at 69, and I intend to try, and the trying will cost me 1 beer per revelation, which is the best rate I have encountered in retirement, and the retirement, all things considered, is well managed. Let me finish with Cork, because Cork is where I come from and where I no longer live, and the relationship between a place you come from and a place you are has a specific texture that I find I think about in Chiang Rai in a way I did not think about in Cork. My son Fergal rang in November, during the 3 weeks of the drawer, and I did not tell him about the drawer, because it was not the kind of thing I would tell Fergal during a normal call, and the call was normal. He asked about my health, I asked about his children, we talked about a planning permission issue he was dealing with in Dublin. I said I would look at the plans if he sent them. He said he would send them. He has not sent them. My daughter Sierra rang in December, after the bathroom was completed, and I told her about the bathroom, and she said that was a big renovation, and I said it was a good one, and she said she hoped I was happy, using the word in the way that people who love you use it when they are not entirely sure of the answer, and I said I was, which is the true answer, and she said she was glad. I am in Chiang Rai. Juanita is making something in the kitchen that smells correct. The calendar reminder is set. The hills are where they were. I am happy, which is the true answer, and I have the bathroom to prove it. I have the mountains to prove it. I have the Saturday market and the Tuesday coffee, and Liam on Fridays, and the specific laugh that means I have said something she finds specifically rather than generally amusing. I have the letter in the drawer, which is now in the calendar, which is where it should always have been. I have arrived at 69 in a place where I did not expect to be, and the arriving was imprecise and the understanding was late, and the bathroom renovation was overdue, and I am a civil engineer who has spent 36 years knowing that the final state of a project is what you measure it against, and the final state is good, and the program continues, and I am keeping it, and I owe Liam a drink on Friday, and I will buy it, and the hills will be there in the morning, and this is quite enough.